for joining Handle Your Business with Bobby Dino. I am joined by logocentrifuge himself. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, man, that's
Is
part
that
of the charm is nobody knows how the fuck to pronounce the name.
right? But the actual name being Chance Lunceford. Hi, Chance. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Bobby, thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure and an honor.
No, man, it's cool talking with you. You know, a lot of times on social media, when people will make posts, it doesn't necessarily translate well. The kind of maybe humor or affect that you wanted behind it, you know. So I remember the first time I was going to talk to you, I wasn't sure what to expect because a lot of your stuff, I know you're being funny, but it can come off kind of like sounding like either smart ass or whatever, you know. So I'm like, uh-oh, what's gonna happen on his show when I came on? You were a very pleasant dude to talk to, man, and I can tell that you get involved in a conversation and you think. So it's a pleasure having you here, and good to be able to talk again.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and and it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people have that sense like, geez, this guy's something else. What's this interview going to be like?
Yeah,
Look, man, I'm not a bad dude. I'm a jester. I have to, it's just in
yeah,
me. I have to poke fun at things, but I love connecting to people and trying to get inside of their heart and see what's in there. Because to me, if you're not talking to people on that level, then why are you having the conversation?
right. Yeah, and I see what you're saying with that. I mean, it's you want that connection because otherwise everything else is just kind of useless. As you get older, you just kind of see like there's things that are important and there's things that aren't, you know?
Yeah. And look, man, I'm not a dude who needs a lot of other people in my life. I have projects, I got books, I got my family, I got hiking to do. I got a lot of things that I'm interested in. If
Yeah,
I'm going to take time with you, I don't want some superficial nonsense. I want a real conversation where I can learn something and you can learn something. And hopefully, if we're
sure.
recording a conversation, the people who listen are going to come away going, man, I'm glad I listened to that and I learned something and I felt something.
Yeah, no, definitely. Definitely. And before we dive too far in, for people that don't know you or your background, who is Chance?
Sure. Well, I'm a dude from Utah. I was raised in the Mormon church. My family on my father's side helped to settle this place. My mother's family, she came from a successful jazz and then folk singer, and her father was a Golden Gloves boxer who then, due to some violence and some extreme violence, maybe needed to move away. So he moved to Los Angeles, put on a new name, and became a radio DJ. Uh, and that's kind of the confluence of weird energies that
Yeah.
spawned me, and I'm exactly who you might think I would be because of that. And I came into young adulthood with a big chip on my shoulder, and it caused a lot of problems. And I went down a pretty dark road for a while, a lot of drugs, a lot of crime, a lot of violence, a lot of things that taught me a lot of lessons the hard way. And after banging
Mhm.
my head against the concrete until my ear started bleeding, it's like, well, one more bang against this concrete, my brain might not survive. So I should probably either get it done with or decide I'm going to switch directions. And then from that point, it took me about 10 years really from the darkest place I was to the point I'm at now, where I'm glad to be who I am. I'm making steps forward. I have pride in who I am as a man. I have a family. I've written a book. I have a podcast. And so my whole deal is, okay, I lived this life before. I can't take that away. I can't deny it. I'm not going to run from it. So what can I do now? What kind of life can I live now that says this was all worth it? These lessons were worth learning because I've made an impact from the things that I learned and the man I became because of it. And that's kind of my jam.
Mm. Yeah, and yeah, and I can relate. You know, I understand that moment where it's almost epiphanal. to where it's like a light shining down from heaven almost, to where it's like you just an aha moment, they call them too, to where it's like, look, you got to do this, you got to stop doing this. It's just a super duper honest self-assessment, and you see where you're at, and you make a plan, and you decide, like, if I don't act on this. I had something similar, to where I basically thought one day, like, if I don't change the way I'm going, I'm just gonna die in prison. Is my audio coming through okay? I'm hearing something weird in
Yeah,
my.
you're good.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm hearing some weird kind of feedback in my speaker. But yeah, so I had that realization, and I realized that I could either be a good guy or a bad guy, and went through that same kind of dark path myself. That's it's tough when you got to bang your head up against things.
Yeah,
You
it's not the best.
yeah, I mean, it's something to where uh, people, I think they mythify, if that's even the correct term, because not a lot of people have to deal with like violence or bad stuff or crime, as you mentioned, right? So when they meet someone that has, right, or that is very familiar with it, whether it be somebody that was like in the military or someone like us, right? It's almost, they get these questions like, oh, what kind of shit have you seen? Oh, what's this? Oh, what's that? Because it's like they don't ever have to do that shit, or they've never had to. They haven't been a victim yet. Is
Yeah.
essentially what's happened. Uh, so coming from that standpoint and turning it into something good, it's commendable, man. I mean, it's great that you're able to do it, because not a lot of people do.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot because it it's important, and this idea that I think part of the reason that maybe the life of crime or the life of violence is mythologized is number one, like you said, people just haven't experienced that. And it's like, oh, well, here's an interesting story. But number two is that a lot of the people who have lived that life, they haven't really turned around and looked at the ramifications of everything that they did in that life, because to do that is harsh and it's brutal, and it can wreck a person. Because when you look around and you say, I did that, that's my responsibility, and everything in between where I am now and where I was, I have to take responsibility for that and say, yeah, I did hurt those people. Yes, I did cause those problems in the world, and I can't ever take that back. And that's a hard process to go through. But if you don't, then you don't examine the roots of those problems, and then you never fix them. You might
Correct.
mitigate them or something, but you're never going to get rid of that darkness. And look, i'm not I'm not sitting here, just to be clear, I'm not sitting here saying I'm some perfect guy. I have a lot of things to work on still, and that's an endless process. But I have I'm grateful, actually, to be honest, for the life that I live now, that I'm in a place where I feel good about who I am, because I know the lessons. I know the consequences of going the other way, because I went way far. And the pain and the suffering for myself and for the people around me and for the people who have stuck by my side and cared about me that whole time, I don't ever want to be in a place like that again. It's shitty. And on a lot of
Yeah.
levels, I mean that, and so I guess that the difficulty in turning around and saying, I really did these things, these are really the consequences that I caused, it's hard to do that. But like I said, if you don't, then you're setting yourself up to continue to make those kind of mistakes. And the longer you go between where you thought you should have been and where you end up, the harder it is to turn around, until eventually you don't. And you talked about, you said, I had to choose whether I was going to die in prison or not. And I had to do that too. And what cued me into that reality was people committing suicide, people going to prison, a couple people getting murdered in my circle. It's like, okay, well, I'm not living any differently than them. So I'm
Yeah.
going to die soon, or I'm going to go to prison. And I'm not the kind of guy who's going to hang in prison. I went to jail for a while. I don't like it. I don't thrive in there, for sure. Some people like the
Yeah.
routine or whatever. I'm sure nobody loves it, but
Right.
I'm definitely not the guy to be hanging out in prison. And so it's like, well, am I going to die or live? Those are my options. And I
Mhm.
chose life. and it was a 10-year process to really start living like I said. So, I guess my word of advice to people would just be don't have 15 or 20 years of problem making to turn around and face when you could turn around and face it immediately.
Right. And I tell that to these kids, right? Like these 20 somethings essentially. I say that, I say, don't waste the time. Like, another thing that I say a lot is when I see these young people that are like hitting it hard and doing it, and like it's like, oh, he's a 21-year-old millionaire, or he's a whatever. Like, that's awesome, dude. Like, to me, that's like someone that deserves respect, because yeah, they may not have a lot of life experience yet, but they've obviously got some smarts. They had some common sense to stay out of a lot of problems that you and I found ourselves in. You know.
Absolutely. Look, I talk about this on occasion, but I don't feel envy. I mean, maybe for a second or 2 seconds, but I love it when people succeed. And it all ties back into that humility that comes from being such a dickhead for so long. It's
Yeah.
just like, man, good for you. Good. Keep going. But be careful, because there's a lot of trappings along the way, and you're young and you haven't been exposed to them. Yeah, you got $1 million. $1 million can buy you a lot of problems. So,
Yeah.
be careful, but I love it. I love seeing people succeed, especially if I care about them. If my friends succeed, or somebody on the periphery or my acquaintances succeed greatly, it's like, awesome, man. Good for you.
Yeah.
Keep going. And so I see a lot of that out. Somebody will, like, let's take Andrew Tate, for example. Andrew Tate will post a picture of himself driving a Lamborghini. And then,
Mhm.
90% of the comments would be like, "Oh, you rented it and you're a fucking dick." And it's like, dude, why do you hate a guy for being successful?
Yeah.
And more, he's telling you exactly how he did it. Maybe you don't agree with his tactics, but that's that doesn't
Yeah.
have anything to do with whether you should let yourself be pulled out of where you want to be as a person because somebody else has more success than you. Don't be a fool.
Yeah. No, and that is something that, particularly with Andrew. I mean, we're friends, and I've lived at his house, when we were in Romania, and he's a very nice guy, man. He's very he's actually, very very humble. He's not necessarily a lot of what his internet persona is, like in real life. But he's just a dude that's enjoying his life. He came up, and like you said, he tells you how he does it. Um, another problem that I have, but I wouldn't call it, I don't really have any problems, but I'd say another uh, misgiving I have is towards the people that would talk crap on the war room too. This group of guys that he's got going, because it's like the outsiders are talking crap on it, and in the meantime, the people that joined it have just been building themselves. I mean, there's a lot of young guys in there, and there's a lot of older guys too, and it's like they're just improving their lives because of the way the program works. So there is a lot of that out there, to where it's like, why can't you just be congratulatory of somebody making it, instead of just being an asshole? And the real deal, bro, is that the issue is with themselves. It's essentially, it's because it's like a deflection type thing, like, oh, I'm doing shitty in my life, or I'm not doing as well as this guy, so screw this guy.
100%. And look, these groups of men that are being formed, whether it's Hunter Drew's group, or whether it's the 21 guys, or whether it's the War Room, or whether it's Jack Murphy's Liminal Order, that men need other men to be in the company of. And when they
Hmm.
align, when you have a vision, or you have a collection of visions that are pretty strong alignment, that only amplifies your ability to make things happen.
Hmm.
And whether, in the War Room, sure, there's some big doofs in there, but they had the self-awareness to say, I'm a big doof, this guy's not. I'm gonna buy into this and go learn what I can learn from this group of successful people so that I can model my actions after them and become something more than I am. And it's the same in any of
Right.
these groups, of course. But
Mhm.
would you rather be the guy who's being mentored by a bunch of get shit done kind of guys? You want to be the guy with the anime avatar on Twitter talking shit, because it's
Yeah.
it's kind of one or the other. You're not going to be both of those guys. And while we're
Right.
on the subject of war room, let me just jump in real quick. I, I teased Iggy about his golden coat, and he didn't take too kindly to that. So Iggy, if you're watching, I was just fucking with you, dude. It's okay. You can wear all the shiny coats you want. You can be a disco ball in
Hey,
the center of the room. I don't care, man. I'm just messing with
l- l-
you.
and let me tell you something. Let me tell you something about Iggy too, because if Iggy is going to see this because he's mentioned, I want to get him on the show. I just haven't asked him yet, and I'm sure I don't know what his thing is, but I'm sure he'd love to come on. But Iggy is someone that gets in people's heads and kind of allows them to reprogram themselves, but in a good way. He's very good at what he does. I know that there's kind of this like mysteriousness or that he creates around himself, and like if there's a show quality to it, but that's part of what he does, and he's good at it. It's as much as people may like to poke fun at maybe the outer part, you know um he's well, I mean, I know people do, but let me tell you something. I love this guy, and I had a conversation with him when we were in Romania. It lasted about an hour or so, and if I said it was mind altering, I wouldn't be lying. I knew what he was doing because I have my bullshit meter, from prison. So like I that meter tells me when somebody's starting to do something. Like even whether it's a physical or mental, like I can tell when people are starting to run game on me, essentially, right? And I knew that he was starting to get into my head, and I was just like, let's see where this goes. I was like, let's see what he's gonna say right now. And it was something that changed my perspective on a lot of stuff, and uh, kind of the way that I act towards stuff now. So if he can do that with me, right, I know he can do it well with other people, because I know that I've got a pretty strong mental fortitude when I want it. Like I can just shut. Uh,
Sure. And,
you
and
know,
and look, I was teasing the guy about his golden coat, but there are a few
yeah.
people out there who look more ridiculous than I do. I mean, I've got purple duct tape on my autism headphones, and I'm walking around in cargo shorts until it's the middle of January. I mean, it should be taken with a grain of salt. But and I'm the same.
No.
I have my book on common mentality, and it's all about giving you the tools to brainwash yourself, essentially. And that's a weird book to write from a weird dude who
Yeah.
wrote it. Like
Yeah.
I get it, and I have a
No.
shtick too.
No. But
I go around messing with people and things, so I get it. But just don't take it too personally, dude. It's have all the shiny coats you want.
no. And I'm sure he doesn't, man. He's very good at, like I said, he's very good at what he does. He's has a mental fortitude of his own, to where I'm sure he wasn't bothered by it. I mean, I can't imagine him being bothered too much by anything either. Uh, but anyways, enough about Iggy. I'll have him on now. Now there's going to be a round two of this. He's going to be like, "Oh, let's talk about the golden coat, shall we?" No. I'm gonna have to tell him that he took up some time in this interview. Um, okay, so let me ask you this, Chance. You've got a lot on your plate already, as you talked about earlier. You've got your family, you've got projects that you've worked on. You've got stuff to where you don't need to be doing a podcast. You don't need to be on social media making posts or pictures or whatever, right? But you do. Why do you do what you do?
Hmm. Well, To be honest, I feel called to, um, and people get kind of squishy or weird in these kinds of conversations, but I talk to God every day, and He talks back to me,
Mhm.
and I really believe that. And I had this feeling, just a little more than a year ago, about a year and a half ago. It's like I feel like I need to get out there and deliver some of these things that I've used to correct my own life. I've had conversations, and I've done some one-on-one mentoring with people who really want to have a platform to be able to get some of these things out there. And I just joined Twitter. I figured I like to write. Facebook doesn't seem like my jam. Instagram's pictures, and what am I going to do with pictures? So I joined Twitter and I started writing stuff, and I was promptly kicked off just like 2 months later.
Mhm.
and and I got a permanent suspension. So I just spun up another account and did my thing. And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, well, I have to play this a little bit differently. Um, and then I got connected with a bunch of cool people really quickly, like Noble Brown and some of these other people who are kind of in the like, all right, you're actually a man circle.
Right.
And they kind of took me under their wing and showed me the ropes of social media a little bit, because I had never done it since MySpace, more than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, what have I always wanted to do? I've always wanted to have a podcast. I've always wanted to write a book. I see people having these blogs. I've read some interesting blogs. Maybe I'll do that. And so I gave myself about 3 months. I wrote a book. Actually, I wrote two books. I wrote a contribution to another book for Ion Media Company. And then I wrote my own book, and I started the podcast, started the blog, and that took me to January 1, 2019. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay. But to be honest, I kind of got caught up a little bit in maybe the frivolous side of Twitter there for a while. I was spending a lot of time on there, and I had to take a step back, and I call it the sacred silence. Stop doing everything. If it's not necessary, like if it's not necessary to your survival or your day-to-day life, just stop it. Stop it for a while and sit there and ponder and think. Fasting is a great thing to do during these times, but really listen to your heart, really listen to your mind and soul, and see what's important to you. and and what I found is I really love to do the podcast. I really love having the opportunity to connect to people in that way and to offer up good, useful knowledge to people that they can use to improve themselves. um, I have some more writing projects I'm working on. I've been trying to deliver more serious content and do less on Twitter just in general. And I have found that when you use the tool as the tool is meant to be used, or as you feel it's meant to be used, because it's kind of wide open in social media. But what is my purpose? Align your actions, follow it through. And that's why I do it, because God told me to, is is the answer. And I know it sounds weird, and it even kind of sounds weird to come out of my mouth, but that's just what I feel. It's like I talked a little bit. It's like, this was my life. This is my life now. How can I add value to the world? And that's what I feel I'm supposed to do. And so that's why I'm here. And look, I am a smartass, and I do have things to say, and not everybody's gonna like what I have to say, and that's fine. I don't need to please everybody, but if you're in tune with what I'm saying, and you think that the tools I'm offering or the people I'm talking to have something to offer you, I want you to have it. And that's why I'm here, to just fulfill my and live the life that I feel I should be living, so that I don't have to live in a space of regret or, you know, self-loathing or any of the self-destructive stuff that comes when you're living out of alignment with who you know you should be.
Yeah. No, that's good, man, and that's commendable. And a lot of the times, with a lot of the dudes that I've spoken with, not only on the show, but just friends that I've made, I've asked them a similar, or the conversation has, from this question has come up. Um, why do you do what you do? And most of them, if not all of them, will say they felt some sort of calling uh, to serve, essentially. Um, People see these figures, and they see that they get some online following behind them. They see that they have a message. They see that whatnot, Um, they they think that these people are somehow lifted up, right? But in reality, these are men that are just trying to improve themselves and that are sharing their experience is essentially what it is. So it's not that there's some sort of gods, although they might like to think they are. Um, it's that they're just sharing their story.
Yeah, man. And look, it's most of the people, if I have any haters because of any success I've had, it's like, look, man, you don't want to live the life I lived to be able to tell
Right,
this story. It's what I'm here trying to save you from.
right,
Like you talked about those 21-year-old kids making $1 million. Yeah, man. How about all the 21-year-olds do that?
yeah,
If something comes
yeah,
out of my mouth and some youngster hears it and goes, man, I'm not going to do that same thing. I'm going to do the other thing he figured out instead. Perfect. Perfect. And I think, look, most people are good people, or at least they intend to be. Most people, if they have something of value that they can share with other people, they want to do that. That you have the fear and the scarcity stuff that comes up. Am I going to be able to survive if I share? Am I going to have enough money if I give money to this person when they need it, or give something of myself to this person? But when you make that flip and you understand, I manifest my destiny by the things that I do and the way that I think. And if I'm thinking that I'm not going to have and act as though I don't have enough, and I'm not going to have enough. But if I'm thinking I have more than enough to share, and and I will do what it takes to make sure that I have what I need and that I have a surplus that I can share back to my community, whether it's your online community or your neighbor or whatever, sort of group that you find yourself in. The more that you can give, the better that you can serve, the more opportunities that you can create for other people. Well, like I really like to connect people behind the scenes, and let's say that I get Roman McClay connected to a particular filmmaker, and then they make Sanction the movie. Do you think either of those guys are going to forget that I was the one who connected them? Of course not. And when they need a guy to make some connections, who are they going to ask? The guy who already did that successfully, or some random dude who they don't know? Well, it's me. And then I say, yeah, first one's on the house. This time we got a finder's fee. I'm happy to help. I'm here to help, and I get paid. And they say, okay, yeah,
yeah,
because we're men of honor, we want you to be paid because you're our friend. You've helped us. We want to help you. And I believe that that's true almost always. I mean, there's psychopaths and sociopaths out there who just want to eat you for lunch and get everything they can out of you and give nothing in return, and that's fine. And look them in the eyes and smell them, and you'll have a pretty good idea who you're dealing with. But most people aren't like that. That's 1%. So you got 99% of the people out there who really do want the best for you, even if they're afraid to help you because they're worried about themselves. And I guess what I hope is that I can continue to influence people because I know I have. They've told me, Chance, some of the things you said helped, or this interview that you did with this person really enlightened me, or I read your book and I'm working on myself, and thank you. It's like, yeah, man, you're welcome. That's what I'm here to do. And it fuels me to continue on down that path that I believe is my purpose, because I see the world around me becoming better. And if you can find the thing that allows you to see the world becoming better because of your direct actions, how could you live an unhappy or unfulfilling life?
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. You've you've brought up the fact that you're able to help people. You're able to essentially monetize it as well, with books and with whatever, to where people have bought stuff from you. You're turning, or I shouldn't say turning, although you're continuing to improve yourself, you have turned a bad thing into a good thing. You've turned this bad experience you've had into this good experience, right? So if you think that there was one attribute that you don't even need to name one, you can name a couple, but if you think that there were an attribute that helped fuel you towards success, right? Which attribute do you think that would be? Like, would it be your focus? Would it be your mindset? Would it be like what was the thing that you feel came from you that drove you in that direction?
I'd say it's two things primarily that I can sort of credit building upon those things with everything else, or mostly. And on the one hand, it's it's finding your principles. It's finding what are my rules for life. And I don't listen. I'm a very independent dude. I don't want people telling me what to do. I don't like it. I want to tell me what to do. I'm willing to hear you, and I'm willing to think about it and ponder. And I'm a lot better at it now than I was as a kid. When as a young kid or a young man, you want to give me advice, you can get fucked. I don't have time for that.
Yeah.
I'm doing whatever I'm doing. But I've matured, and I think, okay, what what within this story problem can I just sweep away all the rest? And here's the thing that I need to really hear. But
Mhm.
but I know who I am because I've written down my rules for life, and I literally have them written down, and I say them to myself, and I remember them, and I have phrases that I've developed that are built upon those. But if you don't know who you are, then how are you supposed to know what you're going to do? You have to figure out who is Chance, who's Bobby, who are you? Because if you
Mhm.
don't know who you are, then you don't know how to act. And so that's number one, is finding your principles out, and literally writing them down and revisiting. This is the
Mhm.
truth that I live by. These are the rules that I live by. These are my requirements for life. And if I'm not meeting these, then I'm not living right. And then number two is I don't give up. I'm persistent. I'm obnoxiously persistent. Uh, and that's caused me a fair amount of problems in and of itself, because people don't necessarily like you just hammering away at them constantly, 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 until they either just cut you out of their life or they finally cave to whatever it is that you're throwing at them. But I do that to myself.
Yeah.
It's like, no, man, you can't do this. You can't do this. And they just go back. Well, okay, let's examine. But between knowing myself and just having that never quit attitude, all the rest follows from that. Because if I know who I am, I have an idea where I'm going, and then all I have to do is walk it. And if I'm guaranteeing myself I'm going to keep walking down that direction, then how can I fail?
Yeah. Yeah. Persistence is a big one. Persistence is something that I've always felt was one of the factors that you needed to obtain anything. You needed to keep going. I call it. I mean, it just being committed. Uh, in the code, I talk about something similar to where the first chapters are. It basically tells you to accept responsibility for yourself and your actions and your life and where you're at and everything. Okay, and then commit to the process of getting out of there, right? And the commitment is the persistence. Once you commit, like that's it. You can't stop. You got to keep going. And I totally agree with that. That's for all you that are watching, that's a big one. Most people, it's not that they fail because they tried something and it didn't work out. It's they fail because they tried something and then gave up and just didn't stay at it. Most people take themselves out of the race.
Hell yeah, man. I mean, that's undeniable. And I will caution people, you need to be careful how you're viewing the things that you commit to, because if you have a I'm going to do this, or I'm going to die trying to do this attitude, get rich or die trying, or whatever your thing is, you should be very careful about the things that you choose to commit to in that way. And you should have an understanding of what it is you're really committing to. Am I committing to this job, or am I committing to a successful life where I'm doing meaningful things? Am I committing to this, uh, say, relationship, or am I committing to living in a way that I can harbor the best relationships? Because you can find yourself in shitty situations if you give that do or die attitude to something that isn't worth committing to in that way. And if it
Oh
isn't
yeah.
worth committing to in that way, maybe you need to examine how much time you really have in your life and ask yourself, do I even want to be spending time on this thing? Because if it's not advancing your purpose, if it's not advancing
Mhm.
your deepest principles and your knowledge that you're living the correct way, boy, 100 years is not that long, and most of us ain't getting that much. It's so.
Yeah, I know, and that's one thing that, all you youngsters out there, you better realize that this time goes by fast, man. Like you're you're young 1 second, and then all of a sudden you're not, and it just speeds up. Um, so talking about who you are as a person and the things that you've accomplished, right? There is that hater factor that, is always there. I have them too, which is that still trips me out that people hate on me because I decided to like turn my life around after prison, like I get hate. It's like, that's, my message is, hey, you can always turn it around, and you can too. And there's nothing that's, too hard, and you'll still find haters for that. Yeah. So it's this very weird type of relationship with people that just don't give a crap anyway. Like they're just trolls and they don't mean anything. But that being said, right, if there were one kind of falsity, or like just some stupid hate that you heard, or like some whatever that you were like, oh well, that's not true, or oh that's not, is there anything that you want to clear up, or that you would just want to put out there so that people hear it from your own lips?
Hmm. Well, people say a lot of shit.
Yeah.
Look, to be honest, um, I haven't really people. I came. One of the first things I did when I came onto social media was say, "Here's all the shitty things I've done."
Mhm.
And so, I mean, it's kind of just already all out there, and people
Right.
can talk about that, but it's like, okay, okay, I told you that. There's this line from a
Yeah.
Tool song, and Maynard says, "All you know about me is what I sold you." And it's
Yeah.
I already told you all the problems, dude. The things you're bringing up to me are already things that I literally told you about them, and now you're saying them to me. It's like, cool, man. I got the
Yeah.
T-shirt. We're all good. So no, I don't. I mean, I don't think so. The one thing I would probably push back again, just in general or in principle, is just the excuse making. What
Yeah.
you can solve a problem or you can excuse a problem, but you can't do both. So take your pick and run with it. But it, like, I know a lot of people don't feel this way, but if you're a dumbass, I'm gonna block you on my social media. I don't I don't have time to waste
Yeah.
on
Me
you.
too. Me too.
See ya.
I do.
Bye.
I do the
Yeah.
same thing.
Block. 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 I got
I
more than
don't
a
hang
thousand
out
people
with
blocked.
assholes.
Yeah.
Oh wow. I don't think I got that many block. But I don't hang out with jerks in real life. So why am I going to do it on social media? I mean, like, I'm not spending any time with any assholes. That's not my gig. If other people have that weak-minded thing to where they've got to be the victim of someone else's just verbal assaults and just whichever, cool, go for it. But that ain't me. I don't do that. Um, but there is this thing, like how you said, you put it all out there, to where it's like, I get that. Um, when you've been through real bad shit, it's like, what worse can you do? Like, what more are you going to throw at me than I haven't already had thrown at me or thrown at myself? Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it's people say stuff, and you just move on. Uh, but sometimes you just want to get the story right. Like sometimes the conversation becomes too loud in the wrong way, to where it's like, you want to be like, look, that's not who I am. That's not how I think. This is who I
Yeah. Actually, you know what? I do have one little thing.
am. Okay.
People have accused me of being like a alt right kind of guy,
Okay.
and that's so funny to me. I'm Democrats and Republicans are just like the the flip side of the same retarded coin, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, I'm not my politics is, I want to have control over my life, and I want you to have control over your life, and I don't want to infringe on your ability to do that, and I don't want you to infringe on my ability to do that. And if you try to, we're going to solve that the way we solve that. But other than that, I don't care what you do. don't hurt people. I'm not going to hurt people. And if
Yeah.
that's all right, if that's the definition of all right is I want to take responsibility for my life and enjoy the rewards and the consequences, and I want you to do the same thing, I guess I'm all right. But that doesn't seem to be what people mean when they say that. It seems to mean
Yeah.
some sort of like militant Nazi,
Nazi,
like
white supremacist.
masochist.
Yeah, all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so look, I don't really I remember when I was at 21 convention, when I spoke at their patriarch edition, they asked me to be on their Red Man show live. And just to, for people out there that may be watching that are involved in 21 or friends with the speakers or the organization or whatnot, I have nothing against the speakers. I think all those dudes are fine. I don't have anything against any of it, like any of so great that you're finding stuff out at 21 and you're improving your life. That's awesome, right? But I remember when I was sitting on that stage with Red Man group, they asked me how did I come to the red pill. And it was weird because I've never fucking identified with the red pill in my life, right? And I had to tell him that, like, in the nicest, because I know this is being filmed, and I'm like, well, I've never really identified myself as red pill. We just have similar thoughts and thinking on things, and so I can understand that, because it's like, because you want to accept responsibility, or because you know that you have to improve yourself or whatever, well, he's too conservative, or he's taking the pill, and it's like, nah, I'm just living life how I'm supposed to live.
Yeah. And look, I'm friends with a lot of those 21 guys, and I have a lot of respect for a lot of
Yeah.
them too. So, but it's the same as like, bro, I'm not angry about my divorce. I'm good. Like I'm real good over here. and
Yeah.
there's a lot to be learned from evolutionary biology and how it plays out in gender dynamics and everything. It's valuable stuff, but defining your life by those rules maybe is missing the forest for the tree.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. No, and there's a lot of that going on, because people like to be structured, and everybody says, like, oh, I'm a rebel, or oh, I'm this or that, when in reality they got their little routines and their structures and their repetitiveness that they do, right? Because it creates a comfort when it's something that. And people they like lists, they like bullet points, right? And you'll see that on social media that says, you want to be a man, boop, 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 boop. And it's like, oh shit, there you go, there's a list, man, that's the man list, right? and and I think that defining that there's a lot of that goes on with relationships. You'll see everybody commenting on relationships, which is normal because everybody has one or lack of one, right? So it's, hey, if you want to be if you need to find a good woman, it needs to be this. Boop, 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 right? And it's like, I mean, sure, there might be some good, but perfection doesn't exist.
Yeah.
We're still humanly fallible, so to speak, to where things just get messed up and nobody can actually live to that standard, right? So I think that it does these guys a disservice in a way, if you're coming at them with an extreme and telling them it can only be this, and nothing can live up to that, or that doesn't always apply.
Yeah. And none of those guys are living exactly according to those bullet points either. In fact, I just had a conversation with Elliot Hulse on my podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
we had a really great connection, maybe 2/3 of the way through, because he was saying, this is kind of what I see as what a patriarch should be. This is how a man should be in his family, and he said, look, not to say that if you're not living that way and you're happy that you should just change things up. If you're happy and you're good, but this is just what I see as the natural order or the divine order. And then I said, look, I agree with what you're saying, but I want to be clear to my audience that I'm struggling on these levels. And he was like, yeah, okay, well, I think that's important, and I want to do the same. And he said, I am failing on what I just said on these levels, and just being honest about that. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
like Alexander Cortez is a good dude. I get a kick out of that guy. And he makes these lists
Yeah.
and then gets on national news and shit. It's like, but he knows exactly what he's doing. And people people who don't understand him or understand what he's doing, they only see that list and they go, oh, well, look at this long-haired Cro-Magnon dude, he's an asshole. But then meanwhile, he's got 20,000 tweets in between those list tweets that are like, here's something I've learned, here's something I've been thinking about, here's some philosophy, here's
Right.
some free stuff that will help you understand how to exercise better or eat better or think better. And they just totally disregard that. And I've had some of those things too. It's like, dude, I've written 100 threads on Twitter about how to think better or live better or experiences that I've had that can shine some light on things. I've written parables and allegories, but you want to find the one tweet where I was clearly being sarcastic and even put like a, like
Yeah.
laughing emoji. And okay, well, block. If you can't, like if
Yeah.
that's the one thing that gets you, and I've learned, and I've learned that from people like Alexander. It's like, that's a honey trap, man. You're buzzing around.
Mhm.
Okay, fly, you landed in the honey. Squish, next. We're good.
Yeah. And let me tell you something about Alexander. That's my little brother right there, and he knows it too. I really appreciate that guy, and appreciate the way that he'll be on the show, but he's got his own backstory, and he was able to turn it around as well. But while he was still young, which is the cool part, because now he's just got a longer life to live of success. But yeah, Alexander's a smart dude. That's one of the things. I become friends with these guys, right? And I'm just thinking like buddies, friends. Oh, excuse me. Let me turn that off. I'm just thinking buddies or friends. Yeah, that's an alarm that I had set earlier. That's nice. Um, and in reality, they have they're known for something, right? And Alexander's extremely intelligent. So I'm just thinking, we're just broing around having drinks in Romania, and then he'll just come with, oh yeah, and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, oh yeah, you do that, like I forgot that's one of your things.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
cool when you have friends like that, and he is someone that knows exactly what he's doing. He knows.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he's a smart kid, or I should say, young man.
when I when I had him on my podcast, I did that
Mhm,
impression of him, and then I
mhm.
I told him I based the impression of him on the Rain Man. And he's like, "What?"
Oh Jesus,
I said, "Yeah, man, the Rain
Jesus.
Man. Like, that's the model I used to do the impression of." And he totally took that and started just like, "All right, you dick."
Yeah,
And then I asked him, "Are you
yeah,
think you're autistic?" He's like, "Nah. I'm, people say people are autistic, but I'm they're just really fucking smart. It seems like they're autistic just because they
yeah,
have a really good brain that works well." It's like, no, man, I'm not autistic. I'm just really fucking smart. And it's like, yeah,
yeah.
he is. And that's something. Look,
Mhm.
if there's one thing I've learned from social media, and I can't believe that everybody doesn't understand this feature of social media. In fact, to me, it's the defining feature, which is this: I've gotten to connect with presidential candidates and multi-millionaire business people and social and
Mhm.
cultural influencers and people with really interesting stories and super geniuses and authors. And it wasn't hard. I like it was as easy as, I have a podcast, want to come on here? And then after the podcast, hey man, you want to join my group of podcast guests? Or hey man, how can I help you? How can I connect you to other people? And suddenly it's like, man, I'm connected to people all over the world that do all kinds of things at the very highest level, and all I had to do was just ask them to be my buddy. And so,
Mhm.
there's a lot of people out there who spend a lot of time on social media and they have zero meaningful things to show for it. I have all these relationships, I've had all these experiences, and I continue to grow that. And it's all because I understood the value of a network. And I'm an autistic dude who is I'm a dorky Asperger's guy. So if I can do that, you can do that. Believe me. If I can do it, you can do it. And that's, I would love if people listening to this conversation could take that message to heart and say, if I only learn one thing from Chance, it's that it's really easy to connect with people and that there's a lot of value in it. And I'm going to start doing that today. I had just had a conversation with a guy named Robin Black, and he said something really cool. He said, mastery is a very long road that starts right now. And it's the same with your connections and your network and your success. It's a very long road that starts right now. You start right now, and then pretty soon it snowballs and you see the results, but you got to commit. And that's, I hope people would hear that and just like turn off the podcast and go do it right now. Go connect with somebody that you admire. And I guarantee you, unless you go into their DMs and say, hey, if you try once or twice, they'll reach out to you. If you say, hey, here's something that you do that I really appreciate, I'd like to know more, they will go, okay, cool, I will tell you more. And then you can make an acquaintanceship. And if you have something to offer, you can befriend them and go do that. And you'll be way better off.
Yeah, you know what? Listen to that, people. As a matter of fact, we can close with that because I like how you said that. Stop listening to this podcast and go do it right now, because you're right. There is urgency to it, and business and money moves quickly. It's not something that waits around for you. So your road to success starts right now. Hey, Chance, thank you for coming on, man. It was a pleasure talking. Before we get out of here, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah.
Oh, did I lose you? Oh, there you go.
Obviously, my podcast. You've been on there. No, I'm here. Yeah, my podcast.
Yeah. Okay.
Logocentrifuge podcast. You can find it on YouTube or Anchor or any of the major platforms. And if you want to check out my book, if you're interested in learning a little bit about how your mind works and setting yourself up for success, gumroad.com/L/MENTL, Uncommon Mentality.
I'll have it all. Text that stuff to me. I'll have it all in the bottom, in the little block for you and everything.
Perfect.
Hey, one more question before we go.
Yeah, man.
Who do you think should come on this show? Is there anybody in mind that hasn't been on yet that you think, you know what, this would be a good guest to have?
Let's see. Well, I really feel like the conversation I had with Elliot Holst was impactful. It's been quite well received. And if I was going to
met
add
him too.
another one to the mix, he's a good dude, and he's really,
yeah. We met at 21.
He's done some things in his life.
Yeah, I actually took a picture of him because I was taking pictures of the different dudes, and I was like, hey man, he did this one where he was like pointing up at the sky, and I got it, and he was like, oh thanks bro, you know. So I mean, I met him. It's cool. That'd be a good one.
There's sort of a less known guy, and he's like shaking hands with Roman kind of a guy, but it's Wells, and Wells is an interesting dude, and Wells is one of those guys, when you hear him talk, you're like, oh well, yeah, he kills people, and that's, he does, but he's an interesting dude. And if you could convince him to come on and talk about his experiences in the Middle East and elsewhere, that would be, I think, a very interesting conversation.
Yeah, well, for sure. All right. Hey, Chance, thank you for joining, man. And you and I will talk again soon.
Very good. It's an honor and a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks. And for all you out there, thank you for joining Handle Your Business with Bobby Dino. And until next time, stay safe out there.